Once upon a time, in a faraway village, there lived an old man named Tari. Tari was not rich, but he had a very beautiful and happy family. He was a hard-working farmer, but he didn't have a farm of his own. Instead, he worked on other people's farms. Tari made sure his wife and children were always satisfied, even though they didn't have much. Tari's wife was beautiful and worked as a trader in the market, selling vegetables and fruits. Every morning, she prepared her goods with a smile and went to the market to support the family. Tari and his wife had 3 children, 2 sons and a pretty daughter. They were all happy and loved each other deeply. Though they didn't have much money, their home was filled with love and joy. In the evenings, after a long day's work, Tari would come home tired but content. His wife welcomed him with a warm meal, and the children ran to hug him. They would sit together, laugh, and share stories. Tari's life was simple, filled with love and joy, showing that true wealth is measured by the happiness shared with those you care about. Tari had many friends in the village, but they were all wealthier than him. As time went on, these friends began to drift away because Tari was not as rich as they were. They didn't want to be seen with someone who was so poor. Tari felt sad, but he always told himself, "My family is what matters most." One day, there was a big gathering in the village. Tari decided to go, hoping to enjoy some time with his old friends. When he arrived, he saw his friends laughing, eating, and drinking together. They seemed happy to see him at first and invited him to join them. Tari sat down and shared a meal with his friends. But after they finished eating, something happened that made Tari feel very sad. One of his friends stood up and said, "Tari, since you are not as rich as us, you should pack the plates." Tari was shocked. He said, "We are all friends, and I'm older than you all. Just because I don't have as much money as you, doesn't mean you can treat me this way. Everyone should pack their own plate." But his friends laughed and said, "If you don't pack the plates, we'll tell the seller that you haven't paid. That will be even more embarrassing for you." Tari had no choice. He packed the plates and left the gathering feeling very sad and humiliated. He walked home slowly, thinking about how unfairly he had been treated. When he got home, his wife noticed he was unhappy and asked, "Tari, what happened?" Tari sighed and replied, "My friends treated me badly today because I am not as rich as they are. But it doesn't matter. I will always do my best for you and our children." Tari continued to work hard every day, despite the way his friends treated him. He knew that his family needed him, and he was determined to make sure they were always happy and taken care of. Even though he was sad, his love for his family kept him strong. Tari was known in the village for his hard work. He worked on many different farms, but he never had a farm of his own. He would spend long hours in the hot sun, planting and harvesting crops. Sometimes, the people he worked for would not pay him right away. They would say, "Come back tomorrow, Tari." But when he returned, they would still not pay him. Tari's friends, who were wealthier, often took advantage of him. They would ask him to do menial and degrading tasks, like washing their clothes or cleaning their houses. One day, Tari asked a friend for some money to buy food for his family. His friend laughed and said, "If you want money, you must clean my house and wash my clothes." Tari felt humiliated, but agreed because he needed the money to feed his family. He spent the whole day cleaning and washing, and by the time he was done, he was exhausted. His friend gave him a small amount of money, much less than what he had earned, but Tari took it without complaining. Another time, Tari worked on a friend's farm from sunrise to sunset. He worked tirelessly, but when it was time to get paid, his friend said, "I don't have the money right now. Come back next week." Tari felt frustrated, but he had no choice. He needed the work to support his family. Despite all the unfair treatment and hard work, Tari never gave up. He would wake up early every day and go to work, no matter how tired he was. He knew his family depended on him, and he wanted to make sure they had enough to eat and a roof over their heads. The time for harvest arrived, and Tari knew it was a chance to earn some money. He decided to approach Chief Azuka, the richest man in the village who had the biggest farm. Tari hoped that working for Chief Azuka would help him provide better for his family. Early one morning, Tari went to Chief Azuka's house and greeted him respectfully. "Good morning, Chief Azuka. I would like to help with the harvest on your farm. I have my 2 sons who can help too," Tari said. Chief Azuka looked at Tari and said, "Very well, Tari. My farm is large and I need all the help I can get. You can start tomorrow." The next day, Tari and his 2 sons woke up before the sun rose. They made their way to Chief Azuka's farm and began working tirelessly. They worked under the hot sun, picking crops and placing them in large sacks. They worked through heavy rain, determined to finish the harvest on time. Tari's sons were strong and hardworking, just like their father. Together, they made a great team. Day after day, they labored on Chief Azuka's farm, their hands rough and their backs aching. But they never complained because they knew their hard work would bring food and happiness to their family. Finally, after many days of hard work, the harvest was complete. The crops were neatly packed in sacks and stored in the barn. Tari felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. He wiped the sweat from his brow and said to his sons, "We did it. Now let's go and get our payment from Chief Azuka." Tari went to Chief Azuka and said, "Chief, we have finished the harvest. Can we please have our payment?" Chief Azuka nodded and handed Tari some money. "Here is 1/3 of what I owe you. Come back tomorrow for the rest," Chief Azuka said. Tari was surprised. Chief Azuka had never asked him to return for the rest of the payment before, but he took the money and thanked the chief. When Tari returned home, he gave some money to his wife and said, "Cook a delicious meal for the children tonight. They deserve it." That night, Tari's wife noticed he was not sleeping. She turned to him and asked, "Tari, why are you so moody? Did something happen at Chief Azuka's farm?" Tari sighed and replied, "Chief Azuka did not pay me fully. He told me to come back tomorrow for the rest. I am worried because he has never done this before." His wife hugged him and said, "Don't worry, Tari. You have worked hard and everything will be fine. Let's enjoy our meal with the children tonight." Tari nodded and tried to put his worries aside. He knew he had to go back to Chief Azuka the next day to get the rest of his payment. Despite his concerns, he remained hopeful and continued to focus on his family, who were his greatest source of strength and happiness. The following day, Tari returned to Chief Azuka's house to collect the remaining payment for his hard work. As he approached the chief's grand house, Tari felt a mix of hope and worry. He needed the money, but was wary of the chief's unexpected generosity from the previous day. Chief Azuka greeted Tari with a warm smile. "Ah, Tari, welcome back. Come, sit with me. Let us share some food and drink," he said, gesturing towards a table laden with delicious food. Tari hesitated but sat down as the chief's maid served him. The hospitality felt unusual, and Tari couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. However, he decided to listen and see what Chief Azuka had to say. After they had eaten, Chief Azuka leaned back in his chair and said, "Tari, you have worked hard all your life. You deserve more than just a few coins for your labor. I have an opportunity for you to become rich without all this hard work. You just have to see my old friend at the edge of the forest." Tari was taken aback. "Chief Azuka, what do you mean? How can I become rich without working hard?" The chief smiled and replied, "There is a way, Tari, a way that requires a small ritual, but no bloodshed. You are getting older, and soon you won't be able to provide for your family through physical labor. Think about it." Tari's heart raced. The idea of becoming rich without hard work was tempting, but he was also cautious. "I don't know, Chief Azuka. This sounds risky. What kind of ritual is this?" Chief Azuka reached into his robe and pulled out a large bundle of money. He handed it to Tari and said, "Here, take this. It is 10 times the amount I owe you. Think of it as a gift, a small taste of what you could have. Take your time to decide. There is no rush." Tari's eyes widened at the sight of so much money. He had never seen such a large sum in his life. He took the bundle with trembling hands and thanked the chief. "Thank you, Chief Azuka. I will think about your offer and let you know my decision." As Tari walked home, his mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. The money in his hand felt heavy, and the offer weighed even heavier on his heart. When he arrived home, his wife saw the bundle of money and her eyes widened in surprise. "Tari, where did you get all this money?" she asked. Tari sighed and explained everything that had happened. "Chief Azuka gave me this money and made an offer for easy riches. He said it involves a ritual but no bloodshed. I don't know what to do. It's so much money and it could change our lives." His wife listened carefully, her face full of concern. "Tari, this offer sounds too good to be true. We have always lived honestly and worked hard for what we have. Be very careful. Easy riches can bring great trouble." Tari nodded, knowing she was right. "I will think about it carefully. We must not rush into anything that could harm our family." That night, Tari lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The money was hidden safely, but his thoughts were far from peaceful. He knew he had to make a decision soon, but he wanted to ensure it was the right one for his family. The promise of easy riches was tempting, but the unknown risks kept him cautious. Tari spent the next few days wrestling with Chief Azuka's offer. The bundle of money was a constant reminder of the wealth that could be his. He thought about his family, his children's future, and the endless struggles they had faced. The temptation of an easier life was hard to resist. One evening, as the sun set, Tari made up his mind. He decided to accept Chief Azuka's offer, hoping it would bring prosperity to his family. He told his wife, "I have made my decision. I will go to the forest edge tomorrow and meet the old man for the ritual." His wife looked at him with worried eyes, but nodded. "Tari, please be careful. Our family's happiness means more than wealth. Promise me you will come back safe." Tari hugged her tightly and promised, "I will come back safe. This is for our future." The next day, Tari made his way to the forest's edge where the old man lived. The forest was dark and thick, with trees that seemed to whisper secrets. Tari's heart pounded as he approached the old man's hut. The old man, with a long white beard and wise eyes, greeted him. "Ah, Tari, Chief Azuka told me you would come. Are you ready for the ritual?" the old man asked. Tari nodded, his voice trembling slightly. "Yes, I am ready." The old man led Tari to a clearing in the forest. In the center of the clearing was a circle made of stones, and inside the circle were strange symbols drawn on the ground. The old man began to chant, his voice low and rhythmic, filling the air with an eerie feeling. Tari stood in the circle, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. The old man approached him with a small bowl of dark oil and said, "This ritual will grant you wealth without shedding blood. Rub this oil on your body and the gods will bless you." Tari took the oil and, with trembling hands, began to rub it on his skin. The old man continued to chant, and the air around them seemed to shimmer. As Tari applied the oil, he felt a strange warmth spread through his body. The old man then placed his hands on Tari's head and said, "You have been chosen. The gods will grant you riches. But remember, there is always a price to pay. Be wise and use your wealth for good." With those words, the ritual was complete. The old man handed Tari a small pouch filled with gold coins. "This is just the beginning. More will come to you. Go now and take care of your family." Tari thanked the old man and left the forest, his heart filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. When he returned home, his wife and children were waiting for him. He showed them the pouch of gold coins, and their eyes widened in amazement. "Tari, is this real?" his wife asked, holding one of the coins. "Yes, it is real. The gods have blessed us," Tari replied, hugging his family tightly. "Our lives will change for the better now." That night, they celebrated with joy and hope. Tari felt a sense of relief, believing that the dark decision he had made would bring happiness and prosperity to his family. Little did he know, the true cause of his choice was yet to be revealed. In the days that followed the ritual, Tari's life began to change dramatically. His humble home was soon filled with wealth beyond his wildest dreams. Gold coins, fine clothes, and beautiful ornaments adorned their once simple abode. Tari, who had always been seen as the poorest man in the village, was now one of the wealthiest. The villagers were astonished. Everywhere Tari went, people would stop and stare, whispering to one another about his sudden fortune. How did Tari become so rich overnight, they wondered. Some speculated that he had found a hidden treasure, while others believed he had been blessed by the gods. Tari's friends, who had once shunned him because of his poverty, now flocked to his side, eager to bask in the glow of his newfound wealth. They praised him, invited him to their homes, and treated him with the respect they had previously denied him. But Tari remembered how they had treated him before, and he was cautious in his interactions with them. At home, Tari's family was overjoyed with their new lifestyle. His children wore fine clothes and had plenty of food to eat. They could now afford things they had only dreamed of. Tari's wife, however, felt a mix of joy and concern. She loved seeing her family happy, but she couldn't shake the unease about the mysterious source of their wealth. One evening, as they sat together in their newly furnished living room, Tari's wife turned to him and said, "Tari, I am happy that we have all these things now, but I am worried. How did this happen so quickly? Where did all this money come from?" Tari took her hand and looked into her eyes. "The gods have blessed us, my love. They have seen our struggles and decided to reward us. I made a promise to them, and they have fulfilled it. You don't need to worry." His wife sighed, still feeling a shadow of doubt. "I trust you, Tari, but please, be careful. Sometimes great wealth can bring great trouble." Tari nodded, understanding her concern. "I promise I will always look out for our family. We have worked hard, and now it is our time to enjoy the blessings." As days turned into weeks, Tari's wealth continued to grow. He invested in land, bought more livestock, and even started his own farm. The villagers' curiosity only grew, but Tari kept the secret of his wealth close to his heart, sharing it with no one. Despite the luxurious life they now led, Tari's wife kept a close watch on her husband. She noticed how he seemed more distant and preoccupied at times, as if a burden weighed heavily on his shoulders. She knew Tari loved their family dearly, but she couldn't help but wonder if the price of their newfound wealth was higher than they realized. For now, the family enjoyed their prosperity, and the village buzzed with stories of Tari's transformation. Little did they know, the true test of Tari's choices and the price of his wealth was still to come. As Tari's wealth grew, his old friends, who had once abandoned him due to his poverty, began to return. They were eager to be close to him again, drawn by his newfound riches. Every day, they would visit Tari's house, showering him with praise and asking how he had become so wealthy so quickly. One afternoon, as Tari sat in his grand living room, a group of his old friends came to see him. They brought gifts and spoke with exaggerated enthusiasm about how happy they were to see him doing well. "Tari, old friend," one of them said, "we are so proud of you. You have achieved so much in such a short time. Please tell us your secret. How did you become so rich?" Tari smiled politely but felt uneasy. He knew that revealing the true source of his wealth would bring trouble. "I have been blessed by the gods," he replied. "They saw my hard work and decided to reward me." His friends exchanged glances, not entirely convinced. One of them leaned closer and said, "Come now, Tari. We are your friends. You can trust us. There must be more to it than just divine blessings." Tari maintained his calm demeanor. "It is the truth. The gods have been kind to me. I cannot explain it any other way." His friends were persistent. They visited him regularly, each time trying different ways to coax the secret out of him. They would flatter him, bring him lavish gifts, and even offer to share their own wealth in exchange for his knowledge. "Tari, think of how much more we could achieve together," another friend suggested. "If you share your secret, we can all be wealthy and powerful." But Tari remained firm. He knew that the secret of his wealth was not something he could share lightly. It was tied to a dark ritual, and he didn't want to drag anyone else into the dangerous pact he had made. "I appreciate your offers, my friends, but I must decline. I cannot share what is not mine to give," Tari said. As time went on, his friends' persistence began to wane. They grew frustrated with Tari's reluctance and started to distance themselves once more. Some even whispered behind his back, spreading rumors and speculation about the true nature of his wealth. Tari felt the strain of their suspicion and the weight of the secret he carried. Despite the luxurious life he now led, he often found himself longing for the simple, honest days before the riches came. He missed the genuine companionship he once had, even if it was tainted by poverty. At home, Tari's wife noticed his troubled demeanor. One evening, as they sat together, she gently asked, "Tari, what is bothering you? I see the worry in your eyes." Tari sighed deeply and said, "Our friends, they keep asking about our wealth. They do not believe it is just the God's blessings. I cannot tell them the truth, but their questions never stop." His wife squeezed his hand and said, "We must stay strong, Tari. We have each other, and that is what matters most. Let them talk. As long as we know the truth, we can face anything." Tari nodded, grateful for her support. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he was determined to protect his family and the secret of their wealth. The return of his friends had reminded him that true loyalty and love could not be bought, and he cherished the genuine bond he had with his family above all else. With his wife's reassurance, Tari resolved to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that their strength as a family would guide them through even the darkest times. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a messenger arrived at Tari's house with a message. The old man from the forest had summoned Tari. The message was brief and ominous, causing a shiver to run down Tari's spine. He knew that the old man's summons could only mean one thing: a demand. The next morning, Tari made his way to the edge of the forest where the old man lived. His heart pounded with each step, dread gnawing at his insides. When he reached the old man's hut, he found the old man waiting for him, his expression grave. "Tari," the old man said, his voice as ancient as the trees around them, "the time has come for you to fulfill your part of the bargain. The gods demand a sacrifice." Tari's heart sank. "What kind of sacrifice?" he asked, his voice trembling. The old man looked at Tari with piercing eyes. "You must sacrifice your only daughter, Amina, to the gods. It is the price for the wealth you have received." Tari staggered back, his mind reeling with horror. "No, not Amina. She is my only daughter. I cannot do this." The old man's face remained impassive. "If you do not fulfill the god's demand, you will lose everything: the wealth, your sanity, and your life. The gods will take back their blessings, and you will be left with nothing." Tari felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. The thought of losing Amina was unbearable. She was the light of his life, kind and gentle, loved by everyone in the village. He could not fathom the idea of sacrificing her. "Please, there must be another way," Tari pleaded, his voice breaking. "I cannot harm my daughter." The old man shook his head. "There is no other way. You have 7 days to make your decision. If you do not sacrifice Amina, the gods will take her themselves, and you will suffer the consequences." Tari returned home, his mind a whirlwind of fear and despair. He couldn't share this burden with his wife. The thought of telling her was too much to bear. Tari couldn't sleep. The old man's demand haunted him. Sacrifice Amina? How could he even think of it? Yet the threat was clear. Refuse and he would go mad, and his secret would be exposed. Tari paced the floor, his mind in chaos. "I can't do this to my daughter," he whispered to himself. But the fear of losing everything, his wealth and his sanity, gnawed at him. During the day, Tari watched Amina play, her laughter piercing his heart. "She's my only daughter," he thought. But then the old man's voice echoed in his head. "You have 7 days, or the gods will take her themselves." Tari tried to rationalize. "I still have 2 sons," he thought. "They can carry on the family name." He knew it was a terrible thought, but the fear of losing everything pushed him closer to making the unthinkable decision. His wife noticed his turmoil. "Tari, what is wrong?" she asked, but he couldn't tell her. He just shook his head, muttering, "Everything will be fine." The days passed, each one heavier than the last. On the 5th day, with his heart breaking, Tari finally decided to follow through with the ritual. The fear and the old man's threat left him feeling like he had no choice. He hoped somehow this terrible act would protect the rest of his family. But the decision tore at his soul, and he knew he would never be the same again. On the 5th night, Tari's heart was heavy with dread. He prepared the drink and the black oil as instructed by the old man. His hands shook as he mixed the concoction, knowing the terrible purpose it served. Tari found Amina playing in the yard. "Amina, come here," he called softly. She ran to him with a smile, trusting her father completely. "Drink this, my dear, and use this oil. It's very important." Amina hesitated, but took the drink. "Okay, father," she said, trusting his words. She drank the potion and took the oil. As the potion took effect and Amina fell unconscious, Tari's heart broke. He carried her to the forest, each step feeling like a weight on his soul. Tari reached the clearing where the ritual was to take place. He laid Amina gently on the ground, her face peaceful and unaware of the horror about to unfold. He took a deep breath, his hands shaking as he prepared to complete the ritual by pounding her in the mortar that the old man had prepared. "I'm so sorry, Amina," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. He knelt beside her, the weight of his decision crushing him. Just as he was about to proceed, a piercing scream shattered the silence. "Tari, no!" It was his wife, her voice filled with desperation. She had followed him, suspecting something was terribly wrong. The villagers, awakened by her scream, rushed to the forest, their torches lighting up the darkness. They found Tari, kneeling over Amina, and quickly restrained him. His wife ran to Amina, tears streaming down her face as she cradled their daughter. "What have you done, Tari?" she cried, her voice trembling with shock and grief. The villagers took Amina to the herbalist, hoping to undo whatever had been done to her. Tari was left behind, his heart shattered by the enormity of his actions and the realization of what he had almost done. That night, Tari was tied up and kept in his compound. The villagers guarded him, their faces filled with a mixture of anger and pity. Tari's wife wept throughout the night, unable to comprehend how her loving husband could be driven to such a terrible deed. As the first light of dawn broke, the villagers gathered outside Tari's home, murmuring in disbelief and anger. Amina had been taken to the herbalist, who was working tirelessly to reverse the effects of the ritual. Tari's wife sat beside their daughter, her tears falling silently, her heart breaking for what her husband had almost done. The villagers' anger grew as they learned more about Tari's actions. They couldn't understand how a man they had known all their lives could be driven to such a horrific deed. Their trust in him was shattered, replaced by a mix of outrage and sorrow. "Tari must face justice," one of the elders declared. "We must take him to the king." Bound and surrounded by the villagers, Tari was led to the king's palace. His head hung low, the weight of his guilt pressing heavily on his shoulders. The villagers whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with a mix of anger and pity for the man they once respected. In the grand hall of the palace, the king sat on his throne, his face stern and filled with disappointment. The villagers presented Tari before him, explaining the terrible events of the night. "Tari, is this true?" the king asked, his voice echoing in the hall. Tari, weakened by the ritual's backlash, fell to his knees and confessed, "Yes, my king, it is true. I was manipulated by Chief Azuka. He promised me wealth if I performed a ritual, but I didn't know it would come to this." The king's eyes narrowed. "Chief Azuka? Explain yourself, Tari." With a trembling voice, Tari recounted the events leading up to the night of the sacrifice. He spoke of the old man in the forest, the ritual, and the immense pressure and fear that drove him to such desperation. "The wealth came at a terrible price," Tari said, his voice breaking. "Chief Azuka vanished after I accepted his offer. He knew what he was doing. He used me." The king listened, his expression growing darker with each word. He turned to his guards. "Find Chief Azuka. He must answer for his actions." But when the guards searched for Chief Azuka, they found that he had already fled the village, leaving behind only the chaos and destruction he had orchestrated. "Tari, you have committed a grave sin," the king said. "But since you luckily did not take the life of your own daughter, thanks to your wife, I see the manipulation and fear that drove you. Your punishment will be severe, but your life will be spared. You will spend the rest of your days in prison, where your wife and children could come and see you often, but you'll work to atone for your actions." Tari bowed his head, accepting his fate. "Thank you, my king," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. The villagers dispersed, their hearts heavy with the weight of what had transpired. Tari's wife returned to the herbalist's hut, where Amina was slowly recovering. She knew their family would never be the same, but she held on to hope that they could find a way to heal. As Tari was led away to his prison cell, he felt a deep sense of regret. He had lost everything he had ever worked for, all for the promise of easy riches. The love and happiness of his family, once his greatest treasure, had been shattered by his own choices. In his cell, Tari vowed to spend the rest of his life atoning for his sins, hoping that one day his family might find it in their hearts to forgive him. As Tari lay in his cell, the sounds of the village echoing faintly in the distance, he found a measure of solace. He had paid a high price for his wrong choices, but he hoped that his story would serve as a lesson to others. The love of family and the integrity of one's character were treasures far greater than any amount of gold. Tari's tale spread throughout the village, a reminder of the dangers of greed and the true meaning of wealth. Though he spent his remaining days in captivity, Tari's heart found some peace in knowing that his family had forgiven him and moved on to live good, honest lives. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video, comment what you learned from the tale, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting tales just like this one. Thank you.